In the heart of London, where centuries of royal tradition flow through every stone corridor and gilded hallway, there exists an unspoken understanding. The Royal Guard stands as silent sentinels, protectors who speak only when protocol demands it. They are the invisible shields of the crown, trained to blend into the background while maintaining absolute vigilance. But what happens when duty collides with conscience? When a moment arrives that forces even the most disciplined soldier to break the sacred silence that has defined his service? On a crisp autumn morning in 2023, Senior Guard Marcus Wellington stood at his post outside the Queen's private chambers, his ceremonial spear gleaming in the filtered sunlight. 23 years of impeccable service had earned him respect throughout the palace. His record was spotless, his loyalty unquestioned. Yet in the span of 30 seconds, everything he had built would crumble as he made a choice that would echo through the halls of Buckingham Palace and capture the attention of the entire world. The Queen Consort Camilla approached that morning with her usual entourage, her confidence radiating as she moved through corridors she had come to consider her domain. But she was about to encounter something unprecedented. A royal guard who would not simply step aside, who would not bow to assumed authority, who would draw a line that even royalty could not cross. The sharp slam of his spear against the marble floor would become the sound heard round the world, a moment that would freeze the Queen Consort in her tracks and change the very fabric of royal protocol forever. This is the true story of that extraordinary day when duty, honor, and human dignity collided in the most unexpected way, revealing that even in the heart of the monarchy, some lines cannot and will not be crossed. The morning began like any other at Buckingham Palace, with the changing of the guard ceremony proceeding with clockwork precision. Marcus Wellington adjusted his scarlet tunic one final time before taking his position outside the Queen's private quarters. The weight of his ceremonial spear felt familiar in his grip, a constant companion through over 2 decades of devoted service to the crown. Marcus had joined the Queen's Guard as a young man of 19, fresh from military training and burning with patriotic fervor. His grandfather had served during World War II, and his father had been a palace security officer for 15 years. Service to the monarchy wasn't just his career, it was his family legacy. Through rain, snow, scorching summer heat, and bitter winter cold, Marcus had stood his post with unwavering dedication. The palace corridors held countless memories for him. He had witnessed historic moments, royal celebrations, and periods of national mourning. When Princess Diana died, he had seen the grief etched on the faces of the royal family. During the Queen's Diamond Jubilee, he had felt the electric excitement that filled every room. Through it all, Marcus maintained the stoic silence that defined his role, speaking only when protocol absolutely demanded it. His colleagues respected him deeply. Younger guards often sought his guidance on proper procedure and palace etiquette. Marcus never boasted about his position, but there was quiet pride in how he carried himself. He knew every inch of the palace grounds, every security protocol, every nuance of royal hierarchy. His superiors trusted him with the most sensitive assignments because they knew he would never falter. That Tuesday morning in October started with the usual briefing. Captain Harrison outlined the day's schedule, noting that several high-ranking officials would be visiting and that security remained at elevated levels due to ongoing international tensions. Marcus listened carefully, as he always did, taking mental notes of any changes to standard procedure. As he walked to his assigned position, Marcus passed through the portrait gallery where paintings of monarchs from centuries past gazed down with regal authority. He had walked this route thousands of times, but today something felt different. Perhaps it was the unusual tension he had noticed among the palace staff lately, or maybe it was the weight of recent changes since King Charles's coronation and the evolving dynamics within the royal household. The Queen Consort Camilla had been increasingly assertive in her role, which was her right as the king's wife. However, Marcus had observed subtle shifts in palace atmosphere. Some longtime staff members seemed unsettled by new protocols and changing expectations. There were whispered conversations that stopped when guards approached, and an undercurrent of uncertainty that hadn't existed during Queen Elizabeth's reign. Marcus took his position at precisely 8:30, as he had done countless times before. The marble floors gleamed under the soft lighting and the ornate ceiling moldings cast familiar shadows. He planted his feet shoulder-width apart, straightened his back, and assumed the ready position with his spear held at the prescribed angle. To any observer, he appeared exactly as expected, a flawless example of royal protocol in human form. The first few hours passed quietly. A few household staff members moved through the corridor on routine business, offering Marcus the subtle nods of recognition that had become their customary greeting over the years. Mrs. Thompson, the head housekeeper, who had worked at the palace for 37 years, paused briefly to straighten a flower arrangement near his post. She caught his eye for just a moment. and Marcus detected something unusual in her expression, a mixture of worry and determination that puzzled him. Around 11 o'clock, Marcus noticed increased activity from the Queen Consort's private office. Her personal secretary, James Mitchell, hurried past several times carrying folders and looking unusually flustered. Phone conversations could be heard through the partially open office door, though Marcus couldn't make out specific words. His training had taught him to be observant without appearing to listen, to remain alert to potential security concerns, while respecting the privacy of royal conversations. The tension in the air grew thicker as the morning progressed. Marcus had developed an almost supernatural ability to sense mood changes in the palace after so many years of service. Today felt charged with an energy he couldn't quite identify. It wasn't the excitement that preceded happy announcements or celebrations, nor was it the solemn atmosphere that accompanied serious state business. This was something else entirely, an undercurrent of conflict that made him unconsciously tighten his grip on his spear. Just before noon, Captain Harrison appeared at the end of the corridor. He walked with purpose toward Marcus, his expression serious but not alarming. Marcus maintained his position while tracking his superior's approach with peripheral vision. The captain stopped just close enough to speak quietly without being overheard by anyone who might be listening from nearby offices. "Wellington," Captain Harrison said in a low voice, "there may be some unusual activity this afternoon. I need you to maintain standard protocol regardless of what occurs. No deviations, no matter who makes requests or demands. You understand?" Marcus nodded, almost imperceptibly. "Yes, sir. Your position is crucial today. The Queen has specifically requested that access to her private quarters be strictly controlled. Only individuals on the approved list are to be granted entry, regardless of their title or position within the household. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear, sir," Marcus replied, though he wondered what situation could require such explicit reinforcement of basic security protocols. The approved access list was standard procedure, and he had never failed to follow it precisely. Captain Harrison studied Marcus's face for a moment, as if weighing whether to say more. Finally, he nodded and walked away, leaving Marcus with more questions than answers. The unusual nature of the conversation stuck with him as he resumed his vigilant watch. The palace staff seemed to sense the same tension Marcus felt. Conversations were quieter than usual, and people moved through the corridors with a purposefulness that suggested important events were unfolding behind closed doors. Marcus had learned to read these subtle signs over his years of service. The palace had its own rhythm, and today that rhythm felt disrupted. As 1 o'clock approached, Marcus heard the distinctive sound of heels clicking against marble floors. The Queen Consort was approaching, flanked by her usual retinue of advisors and staff members. Marcus straightened his posture, though he had never relaxed his formal stance. This was routine. Members of the royal family frequently passed his position throughout the day, but as the group drew closer, Marcus noticed something that made his pulse quicken slightly. The Queen Consort was carrying a leather portfolio that he recognized as containing sensitive documents related to palace administration. Her expression was determined, almost defiant, and her pace was faster than usual. The staff members following her looked uncomfortable, exchanging glances that suggested they were uncomfortable with whatever was about to transpire. Marcus's training kicked in automatically. His eyes swept the approaching group, noting the positions of each person, their demeanor, and any potential security concerns. Everything appeared normal from a safety perspective, but his instincts told him that this was not a routine visit to the Queen's quarters. The Queen Consort's eyes met his briefly as she approached. There was something in her gaze that Marcus had never seen before, a challenging look that seemed to test his resolve before any words were spoken. In that moment, he sensed that his 23 years of faithful service were about to be put to the ultimate test. The leather portfolio in her hands seemed to radiate importance, and Marcus wondered what documents could be significant enough to require a personal visit to the Queen's private chambers. Protocol dictated that most official business was conducted in designated meeting rooms or the Queen's formal office, not in her personal quarters during midday hours. As the group came to a stop before his position, Marcus felt the weight of history pressing down upon him. Every decision he had made during his career had led to this moment, though he couldn't yet understand what decision he was about to face. The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken tensions and the weight of centuries of royal tradition. The Queen Consort stepped forward, her chin raised with an authority that brooked no opposition. In her mind, her position as the king's wife granted her access to any area of the palace she chose to enter. But Marcus held something more powerful than assumed authority. He held explicit orders and an unwavering commitment to duty that would not bend, even for royalty. The stage was set for confrontation that would shake the very foundations of royal protocol, and force everyone present to choose between competing loyalties. In the space of the next few moments, everything would change. The queen consort stepped forward with the confidence of someone accustomed to having doors opened and paths cleared wherever she walked. Her burgundy dress suit was impeccably tailored, and her jewelry caught the light as she moved. Behind her, 3 staff members shifted nervously, their expressions suggesting they knew something significant was about to unfold. "Good afternoon, Guard Wellington," she said, her voice carrying the crisp authority that had developed since her coronation as queen consort. The use of his name surprised Marcus. Royalty rarely acknowledged guards personally during routine encounters. This was already departing from normal protocol. "Your Majesty," Marcus replied with a respectful nod, maintaining his position with the spear held firmly at his side. His eyes remained focused straight ahead, though his peripheral vision tracked every movement of the approaching group. "I need to access the Queen's private study immediately," Camilla stated, extending her hand as if expecting Marcus to simply step aside and open the door. "There are urgent matters that require her immediate attention, and I have documents that cannot wait for the next scheduled appointment." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. The Queen's private study was on the restricted list he had memorized years ago. Access required specific approval through proper channels, and the Queen Consort was not on today's approved visitor list. His orders from Captain Harrison echoed in his mind. No deviations, regardless of who made requests or demands. "I apologize, Your Majesty, but I cannot grant access to the Queen's private quarters without proper authorization," Marcus replied in the respectful but firm tone he had perfected over decades of service. "If you would like to schedule an appointment, I can direct you to the appropriate office." The Queen Consort's eyes flashed with something Marcus had never seen directed at him before. Genuine anger mixed with disbelief. She was clearly unaccustomed to being denied anything within the palace walls, especially by a guard she viewed as subordinate staff. "I beg your pardon?" Camilla's voice rose slightly, causing her staff members to exchange worried glances. "I am the Queen Consort. I don't require appointments to see my mother-in-law, and I certainly don't need permission from palace guards to move freely through my own home." James Mitchell, her private secretary, stepped forward hesitantly. "Your Majesty, perhaps we could—" "No." Camilla cut him off with a sharp gesture. "This is ridiculous. Guard Wellington, step aside immediately. I have important documents regarding the upcoming state dinner that require the Queen's immediate review and approval. Every minute we waste standing here discussing protocol puts the entire event at risk." Marcus felt beads of perspiration forming under his heavy ceremonial uniform, but his voice remained steady. "I understand the urgency, Your Majesty, but my orders are explicit. Access to the Queen's private study requires advance approval through security protocols. This is for the safety and security of Her Majesty the Queen." The leather portfolio in Camilla's hand seemed to tremble slightly as her frustration mounted. "My safety, my security. I am part of this family, Guard Wellington. I am the King's wife, and I will not be treated like some common visitor who needs to beg for an audience." The tension in the corridor had become palpable. 2 junior staff members had appeared at the far end of the hallway, drawn by the raised voices, but they quickly retreated when they realized the nature of the confrontation unfolding before them. Marcus was acutely aware that whatever happened next would likely become palace legend, discussed in whispered conversations for years to come. "Your Majesty, I mean no disrespect," Marcus said, his training helping him maintain diplomatic language even as the situation escalated. "These protocols exist to protect all members of the royal family, including yourself. If you could provide me with the appropriate authorization, or if someone from the Queen's private office could confirm the appointment, I would be happy to escort you personally." Camilla's face flushed red. "Authorization? From whom exactly? I am the Queen Consort of England. I outrank every person in this building except for the King himself. Are you suggesting that I need permission slips to visit family members?" Marcus realized he was at a crossroads that would define not only the rest of his career but potentially his entire life. He could feel the weight of his grandfather's military medals, inherited and kept in his bedroom as a reminder of honor and duty. He could hear his father's voice from years ago, explaining that true service sometimes required making difficult choices, even when those choices carried personal cost. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, his voice growing firmer despite his respect for her position, "my oath of service is to protect the crown and follow the orders given to me by my superiors. Those orders include maintaining strict security protocols for the Queen's private quarters. I cannot and will not violate those orders, regardless of who asks me to do so." The silence that followed was deafening. Camilla stared at Marcus as if seeing him clearly for the first time, her expression shifting from anger to something approaching shock. Never in her experience as Queen Consort had a palace employee directly refused her a request, let alone done so with such unwavering resolve. James Mitchell cleared his throat nervously. Your Majesty, perhaps I could contact Captain Harrison to clarify the situation. You will do no such thing, Camilla snapped, never taking her eyes off Marcus. This guard seems to have forgotten his place and his duty. His duty is to serve the royal family, not to obstruct us with bureaucratic nonsense. Marcus felt something shift inside him. The implication that he had forgotten his duty struck at the very core of his identity. His duty wasn't to serve individual members of the royal family. His duty was to protect the crown as an institution, to uphold the protocols that maintained security and order, and to honor the oath he had taken when he first donned the uniform. With respect, Your Majesty, I know exactly what my duty is, Marcus replied, his voice carrying a strength that surprised even him. I have served faithfully for 23 years without a single breach of protocol or security violation. My duty is to protect the Queen, and that includes protecting her privacy, her security, and her right to control access to her personal spaces. The Queen Consort took a step closer to Marcus, close enough that he could smell her expensive perfume and see the anger burning in her eyes. Your duty, Guard Wellington, is to serve this family. I am giving you a direct order to step aside and allow me access to that study. If you refuse, you will be in violation of your oath of service. Marcus felt his heart pounding, but his resolve only strengthened. Your Majesty, my oath was taken to the crown, not to individual members of the royal family. That oath requires me to follow the chain of command and security protocols established for the protection of all. I cannot violate my oath, even if ordered to do so. The standoff had reached a critical point. Palace staff members at both ends of the corridor had stopped their activities, sensing that something unprecedented was occurring. The normal sounds of palace life seemed muted, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Camilla's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Are you seriously going to stand there with that ridiculous spear and tell me, the Queen Consort, that I cannot enter a room in my own home? Marcus straightened to his full height, his spear held perfectly vertical beside him. I am going to stand here, Your Majesty, and fulfill my sworn duty to protect the Queen and maintain the security protocols that keep this family safe. If you wish to visit the Queen's private study, the proper channels exist for exactly that purpose. The words hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown down between them. Both sides had drawn their lines, and neither appeared willing to retreat. The outcome of this confrontation would send ripples throughout the palace hierarchy and potentially change the dynamics of royal protocol forever. Camilla gripped her leather portfolio tighter, her knuckles white with tension. Behind her, her staff members looked increasingly uncomfortable, clearly wishing they were anywhere else in the world. The moment had arrived when one of them would have to back down, and Marcus was beginning to understand that it would not be him. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire ready to snap. Camilla's breathing had become noticeably faster, and her cheeks were flushed with indignation. She had never encountered such direct opposition within the palace walls, and the experience was both shocking and infuriating. You seem to be under the impression that you have authority over me, she said, her voice deadly quiet. Let me make something very clear, Guard Wellington. I am not some tourist seeking a glimpse of royal life. I am not a government minister requesting an audience. I am the king's wife, and this building is my home. Marcus maintained his position, though he could feel sweat trickling down his back beneath his heavy uniform. Your Majesty, I understand your position within the royal family. However, security protocols exist precisely because this building is more than a home. It is the seat of the monarchy. These protocols protect everyone, including you. The Queen Consort's laugh was sharp and humorless. Protect me? From what exactly? From visiting my husband's mother? From discussing arrangements for official state functions? Your paranoia is insulting and completely inappropriate. The protocols protect against unauthorized access, security breaches, and potential threats, Marcus explained, his military training helping him remain calm despite the escalating tension. They also protect the Queen's privacy and her right to control who enters her personal spaces and when. Camilla's eyes narrowed dangerously. Are you suggesting that I pose a threat to the Queen? I am not making any suggestions about your intentions, Your Majesty, Marcus replied carefully. I am simply following established security procedures that apply to everyone without exception. The conversation was drawing attention from throughout the palace. Mrs. Thompson, the head housekeeper, had appeared at the end of the corridor and was watching with obvious concern. Two junior guards had positioned themselves at strategic points, though they remained at a respectful distance. Everyone sensed that they were witnessing a moment that would be remembered and discussed for years to come. James Mitchell stepped forward again, his nervousness evident in every movement. Your Majesty, perhaps I could telephone the Queen's private secretary to arrange immediate access. I'm sure this situation can be resolved quickly with a simple phone call. The situation, Camilla said icily, is that a palace guard is refusing to follow a direct order from the queen consort. This isn't a matter for phone calls and negotiations. This is about respect, hierarchy, and understanding one's place within this institution. Marcus felt something crystallize within him. The phrase, understanding one's place, struck at the heart of everything he believed about service, duty, and honor. His place wasn't beneath anyone's arbitrary demands. His place was as a guardian of the crown's security and dignity. Your Majesty, I understand my place perfectly, Marcus said, his voice carrying a quiet strength that made several observers straighten unconsciously. My place is as a protector of the crown and its security. My place is upholding the oath I swore when I entered this service. My place is following the lawful orders of my superiors even when doing so is difficult or uncomfortable. The queen consort's composure finally cracked completely. Your superiors? I am your superior. I outrank every person in this building except the king. You will step aside this instant, or I will have you dismissed from service before the sun sets today. The threat hung in the air like thunder. Marcus felt the weight of 23 years of perfect service, of a career built on unwavering dedication and flawless execution of his duties. He thought of his pension, his reputation, his family's pride in his service record. But stronger than all of these considerations was the memory of the oath he had taken as a young man, and the promise he had made to honor that oath regardless of personal cost. Your Majesty, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to say. If, following my sworn duty and protecting the security of the crown costs me my position, then so be it. I will not violate my oath or compromise the Queen's security, regardless of the consequences to myself. The declaration sent shock waves through everyone present. Palace staff members who had worked alongside Marcus for years watched in amazement as their colleague chose duty over self-preservation. Even Camilla seemed momentarily stunned by the absolute finality of his statement.
Mrs.
Thompson took a step forward, her maternal instincts clearly warring with her respect for royal hierarchy. She had watched Marcus grow from a nervous young recruit into one of the palace's most trusted guards, and she understood the magnitude of the sacrifice he was making. Your Majesty, she said softly, perhaps there has been a misunderstanding. Guard Wellington has always been completely dedicated to the royal family's safety and security. His service record is exemplary. Camilla whirled to face the housekeeper. His service record will show insubordination and failure to follow direct orders if he continues this ridiculous display of defiance. Marcus stepped forward slightly, not enough to abandon his post but enough to draw attention back to himself. Mrs. Thompson, thank you for your support, but this is my responsibility. Your Majesty, I am not being defiant or insubordinate. I am following the direct orders given to me by my commanding officer. Those orders were clear and unambiguous. The queen consort's frustration boiled over. What orders? Show me these supposed orders that override the authority of the queen consort. Marcus knew he was treading on dangerous ground. He couldn't reveal specific security briefings or repeat verbatim conversations with his superiors, but he also couldn't allow his integrity to be questioned without defending himself. Your Majesty, I cannot discuss specific security briefings or operational details. What I can tell you is that I received explicit instructions to maintain strict access control to the Queen's private quarters with no exceptions for anyone not on the approved access list. And who approved this list? Camilla demanded. Who decided that the Queen Consort of England doesn't have the right to visit family members without jumping through bureaucratic hoops? The question hung in the air, and Marcus realized they had reached the heart of the conflict. This wasn't really about access to a room. It was about authority, respect, and the changing dynamics within the royal household. The Queen Consort clearly felt her position entitled her to unrestricted access throughout the palace, while the security protocols treated everyone equally regardless of title. Your Majesty, the access protocols are established by the Queen's private office in consultation with palace security. They are designed to protect the Queen's privacy and security while allowing for appropriate royal business to be conducted through proper channels. Camilla's eyes blazed with fury. Proper channels? I am not some petitioner seeking charity. I am the king's wife, and I will not be subjected to the same restrictions as common visitors. Marcus felt the moment approaching when words would no longer be sufficient. The queen consort's anger was escalating beyond reason, and he sensed that she was about to attempt to push past him physically. His training had prepared him for such situations, but never had he imagined he would need to use that training against a member of the royal family. The leather portfolio in Camilla's hands seemed to pulse with whatever urgent business she claimed required immediate attention. Marcus found himself wondering what could be so important that it justified this confrontation, but his duty didn't depend on understanding the queen consort's motivations. As if reading his thoughts, Camilla held up the portfolio. These documents contain critical information about security arrangements for next week's state dinner. The Queen needs to review them immediately because there are potential threats that require her personal approval of enhanced security measures. Are you going to let your rigid adherence to bureaucracy compromise the safety of foreign dignitaries? The revelation added a new dimension to the situation, but Marcus recognized it for what it was, an attempt to manipulate him through appealing to his protective instincts. If the documents were truly that critical, proper emergency protocols existed for exactly such situations. Your Majesty, if there are genuine security threats requiring immediate attention, emergency protocols can be activated. Captain Harrison can be summoned immediately, and the proper authorities can be notified to expedite access through appropriate channels. Camilla's patience finally evaporated completely. I have had enough of your lectures about protocols and procedures. Stand aside immediately or I will walk through you. The threat was unmistakable, and Marcus felt his entire body tense in preparation for what was about to come. In the space of the next few seconds, either the queen consort would back down, or he would be forced to physically prevent a member of the royal family from accessing restricted areas. The thought was unprecedented and terrifying, but his resolve never wavered. The moment of truth had arrived, and everyone present seemed to sense it. The corridor had gone completely silent, except for the sound of their breathing and the distant ticking of an antique clock. History was about to be made, one way or another. The queen consort took a deliberate step forward, her intention unmistakable. She was going to attempt to walk past Marcus and force her way into the queen's private study. The leather portfolio was clutched against her chest like a shield, and her jaw was set with grim determination. Marcus felt time slow down as his training took over. 23 years of military discipline and palace security protocols had prepared him for exactly this type of situation, though he had never imagined it would involve a member of the royal family. His options flashed through his mind in rapid succession, each one carrying enormous consequences. He could step aside and allow the queen consort to pass, abandoning his post and violating direct orders from his superiors. This would preserve the immediate peace, but would constitute a complete failure of his duty and likely end his career in disgrace. More importantly, it would establish a dangerous precedent that security protocols could be overruled by anyone who claimed sufficient authority. Alternatively, he could maintain his position and physically prevent the queen consort from passing. This would uphold his sworn duty and protect the security protocols that kept the royal family safe, but it would also create an unprecedented incident that would reverberate throughout the monarchy and likely result in his immediate dismissal and possible criminal charges. As Camilla moved closer, Marcus made his choice. This is the book. It's about history. His right hand shifted slightly on his ceremonial spear, and he took a barely perceptible step to his left, positioning himself more directly in front of the door to the queen's private study. The movement was subtle but unmistakable. He was not going to yield his position. Your Majesty, Marcus said, his voice carrying absolute finality, I cannot and will not allow unauthorized access to the queen's private quarters. Please step back. Camilla's eyes widened in shock and rage. You dare order me to step back? In my own home? The confrontation had reached its climax, but before either party could take another step, the sound of rapid footsteps echoed through the corridor. Captain Harrison appeared, moving quickly but maintaining his professional composure. Behind him followed Sir Edward Young, the Queen's private secretary, his face grave with concern. The arrival of these authority figures immediately changed the dynamics of the situation. Mrs. Thompson visibly relaxed, and the junior staff members who had been watching from a distance seemed to exhale collectively. Help had arrived, though it remained unclear whose side that help would support. Captain Harrison took in the scene instantly, his experienced eyes noting the positions of everyone involved, the tension in the air, and the determined set of Marcus's shoulders. Sir Edward moved directly to the Queen Consort, offering a respectful bow before addressing the situation.
Your Majesty,
Sir Edward said in the diplomatic tone that had served him well through decades of royal service, I understand there has been some confusion about access to the Queen's private study. Please allow me to clarify the current protocols.
Okay.
Camilla whirled to face him, her frustration finding a new target. There is no confusion, Sir Edward. There is simply a guard who has forgotten his place and refuses to follow orders from the Queen Consort. Captain Harrison stepped forward, positioning himself where he could address both the Queen Consort and Marcus without appearing to take sides.
Your Majesty, if I may. Guard Wellington is following explicit orders that I gave him this morning. These orders came directly from the Queen's private office and are part of enhanced security measures currently in effect.
The revelation sent a ripple of surprise through the gathered observers. Marcus felt a surge of vindication knowing that his superiors were supporting his actions. But he also recognized that this confirmation would likely escalate the Queen Consort's anger rather than resolve it. Enhanced security measures? Camilla's voice rose again.
Against whom? Are you suggesting that I pose some kind of threat that requires enhanced security measures? Sir Edward stepped in smoothly, his diplomatic training evident in every word.
Your Majesty, the enhanced measures are not targeted at any specific individual. They are part of ongoing security reviews that affect all access to the Queen's private areas. These measures were implemented at the Queen's personal request following recent security assessments. The mention of the Queen's personal involvement seemed to give Camilla pause, but her anger was far from satisfied. Then the Queen can personally tell me why I'm being treated like a security threat in my own home. Marcus watched the exchange with professional interest, noting how his superiors handled the delicate balance between respecting the Queen Consort's position while maintaining necessary security protocols. He also noticed that neither Captain Harrison nor Sir Edward had suggested that he abandon his post or compromise his position. Your Majesty, Sir Edward continued diplomatically, I would be happy to arrange an immediate audience with the Queen to discuss these matters. If you have urgent documents requiring her attention, I can personally ensure they reach her within the next few minutes through appropriate channels.
Camilla's grip on her leather portfolio tightened. Appropriate channels? I am the Queen Consort. I am the appropriate channel.
Captain Harrison decided to address the situation more directly. Your Majesty, I understand your frustration, but these security protocols exist for the protection of all members of the royal family.
They are not personal slights or attempts to diminish anyone's position within the household. Then explain to me, Camilla demanded, why the Queen Consort needs permission to visit family members.
Explain why a guard can refuse a direct order from the king's wife. Explain why I'm being humiliated in front of palace staff by someone who should be following my instructions without question. The accusation of humiliation struck at the heart of the matter.
Marcus realized that this confrontation had become about more than access to a room. It had become about respect, dignity, and the Queen Consort's perception of her position within the royal hierarchy. Marcus stepped forward slightly, drawing everyone's attention. Your Majesty, I never intended any disrespect or humiliation. My only intention was to follow my sworn duty and protect the security of the crown. I deeply regret any distress this situation has caused you. The apology was sincere, but it was also carefully worded.
Marcus was apologizing for the Queen Consort's distress, not for his actions, which he still believed were correct and necessary. Camilla studied his face for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether his words were genuine or merely diplomatic.
Your sworn duty, Guard Wellington, should include following the lawful orders of the royal family. That includes following my orders. Captain Harrison intervened before Marcus could respond. Your Majesty, Guard Wellington's sworn duty is to follow the chain of command established by palace security protocols. Those protocols exist to ensure consistent and effective protection for all members of the royal family.
The explanation was professional and diplomatic, but it essentially confirmed that Marcus had been following correct procedures throughout the entire confrontation.
The implication was clear. The Queen Consort's orders, while undoubtedly well-intentioned, did not override established security protocols. Sir Edward, sensing an opportunity to de-escalate the situation, addressed the Queen Consort directly.
Your Majesty, if I could suggest a solution, I can personally escort you to the Queen's morning room, where I'm certain she would be happy to receive you and review any urgent documents you need to discuss. This would allow for your important business to be conducted immediately while respecting the security measures currently in place. The offer was reasonable and face-saving, providing the Queen Consort with immediate access to the Queen while avoiding further confrontation over the private study. Marcus waited to see whether this diplomatic solution would be accepted or whether the standoff would continue. Camilla looked around the corridor, taking in the faces of the palace staff who had witnessed the entire confrontation. Her decision in this moment would send a message throughout the palace about how such situations would be handled in the future, and everyone present seemed to sense the weight of that decision. The next few seconds would determine whether this incident escalated into a full crisis or whether cooler heads would prevail. But one thing was already certain: The relationship between the Queen Consort and the palace security protocols had been forever changed by Marcus Wellington's unwavering stand.
The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity as the Queen Consort weighed her options. Her eyes moved from Marcus to Captain Harrison to Sir Edward, and finally to the small gathering of palace staff who had witnessed the entire confrontation.
The weight of making a decision that would be remembered and discussed throughout the palace hierarchy for years to come was evident in her expression.
Marcus remained absolutely motionless, his spear held in perfect position, his stance unwavering despite the enormous pressure of the moment. He had drawn his line in the marble floor of Buckingham Palace, and nothing in his demeanor suggested he would cross it regardless of what happened next. Finally, the Queen Consort spoke, her voice carefully controlled but still carrying undertones of suppressed anger. Sir Edward, I want a full review of these security protocols. I want to understand exactly who has the authority to restrict access within this palace, under what circumstances, and with whose approval these measures were implemented.
Sir Edward bowed respectfully.
Of course, Your Majesty. I will prepare a comprehensive briefing on all current security measures and their authorization chain for your review. Camilla turned her attention back to Marcus, studying him with an expression that mixed frustration, grudging respect, and something that might have been curiosity.
Guard Wellington, you have certainly made your position clear today. I trust you understand the gravity of what has transpired here.
I do, Your Majesty, Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the uncertainty about what consequences awaited him. I understand completely, and I accept full responsibility for my actions. The Queen Consort nodded slowly. Captain Harrison, I want a full report on today's incident. I want to understand the exact nature of the orders given to Guard Wellington and the authority under which those orders were issued.
You will have that report within the hour, Your Majesty, Captain Harrison confirmed, though his tone suggested complete confidence in the appropriateness of the orders he had given. With visible effort to maintain her composure, Camilla straightened her burgundy suit and adjusted her grip on the leather portfolio.
Very well. Sir Edward, please escort me to the morning room. Apparently, even urgent state business must now navigate through bureaucratic obstacles. As the group began to move away from Marcus's position, the Queen Consort paused and looked back one final time. Guard Wellington, you have demonstrated remarkable dedication to your interpretation of duty today. I hope for your sake that your superiors share your confidence in that interpretation. The words carried both threat and acknowledgement, leaving Marcus uncertain whether he had earned the Queen Consort's grudging respect or secured his own dismissal. As the group disappeared around the corner, the corridor fell silent except for the sound of Marcus's own heartbeat. Mrs. Thompson approached cautiously, her maternal concern evident in her weathered face. Marcus, dear, are you all right? Marcus allowed himself a slight relaxation of his rigid posture now that the immediate confrontation had ended. I'm fine, Mrs.
Thompson, just doing my job.
She shook her head with a mixture of admiration and worry. That was more than just doing your job, love.
That was taking a stand that could cost you everything. The truth of her words settled over Marcus like a weight. He had indeed risked everything: his career, his reputation, his financial security, and his family's pride in his service. But he had also upheld something that he valued more than any of those things: his sworn oath and his personal integrity. Throughout the afternoon, word of the confrontation spread through the palace staff network with the speed of wildfire. Marcus found himself the subject of whispered conversations, respectful nods, and occasional looks of concern from colleagues who understood the magnitude of what had occurred. Some viewed him as a hero who had stood up for principle. Others worried that he had unnecessarily antagonized a powerful member of the royal family. Captain Harrison returned to Marcus's position 2 hours later, his expression unreadable. Wellington, you're relieved of duty for today. Report to my office at 08 p.m. at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. Marcus felt his stomach drop, but he maintained his professional composure. Yes, sir. Has there been a determination about my conduct today? The captain studied him for a moment before responding. There will be a full review, Wellington. But I will tell you this: you followed your orders exactly as given, and you conducted yourself with honor and professionalism under extremely difficult circumstances.
The words offered some comfort, but Marcus knew that political considerations often outweighed matters of protocol and procedure when dealing with royal family dynamics. He could be technically correct in his actions and still find himself sacrificed for the sake of maintaining harmony within the household. That evening, Marcus sat in his modest apartment, still wearing his uniform, staring at his grandfather's military medals displayed on the mantelpiece. 3 generations of his family had served the crown with distinction, and he wondered if he had honored that tradition or brought shame upon it through his actions. His phone rang repeatedly with calls from family members and friends who had heard rumors about the incident.
Marcus let most calls go to voicemail, not yet ready to explain what had happened or discuss what it might mean for his future. The next morning arrived with unseasonable clarity, the autumn sun streaming through the windows of the palace as Marcus made his way to Captain Harrison's office. His uniform was pressed to perfection, his bearing straight and proud despite the uncertainty that gnawed at him. Captain Harrison was not alone when Marcus entered the office. Sir Edward Young was present, along with a woman Marcus recognized as the Queen's deputy private secretary. The presence of such high-ranking officials suggested that his case had been elevated far above routine disciplinary matters. "Guard Wellington," Captain Harrison began formally. "Please be seated." Marcus remained standing.
"I prefer to stand, sir." Sir Edward stepped forward carrying an official-looking document. "Guard Wellington, we have conducted a thorough review of yesterday's incident, including interviews with all witnesses and analysis of the security protocols in question."
Marcus braced himself for whatever judgment was about to be delivered. "The review has determined that your actions were entirely appropriate and in full compliance with your orders and security protocols," Sir Edward continued. "You conducted yourself with exceptional professionalism under extremely challenging circumstances." Relief flooded through Marcus, but he maintained his stoic expression. "However," Sir Edward added, "the incident has highlighted the need for clearer communication about security protocols within the royal household. Steps are being taken to ensure that all members of the family understand current procedures and the reasons behind them." The diplomatic language didn't hide the fact that the Queen Consort would be receiving additional briefings about security protocols and the limits of her authority over palace guards. Captain Harrison smiled for the first time since the incident began. "Wellington, you're being commended for your exemplary conduct. The Queen herself has requested that her personal thanks be conveyed to you for your dedication to duty and the protection of palace security." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. The Queen herself had not only approved of his actions but had specifically praised them. The vindication was complete and overwhelming. "There is one more matter," Sir Edward said, producing another document. "You're being promoted to Senior Guard First Class, with a commendation for exceptional service to be added to your permanent record." Marcus felt his knees weaken slightly, but his voice remained steady. "Thank you, sir. It is an honor to serve." As he left the office and returned to his duties, Marcus reflected on the previous day's events. He had drawn a line that even the Queen Consort could not cross, and in doing so, he had discovered something important about himself and about the nature of true service to the crown. The confrontation had changed him in ways he was only beginning to understand. He had learned that sometimes the greatest act of loyalty requires the courage to say no, even to those who claim authority over you. He had learned that duty sometimes demands personal sacrifice, and that honor cannot be compromised for the sake of convenience or avoiding conflict. Most importantly, he had learned that the oath he took as a young man still held the same power and meaning more than 2 decades later. When everything else fell away, career concerns, personal comfort, social pressure, that oath remained as his true north, guiding him toward the right choice even when that choice was difficult and dangerous. As Marcus resumed his post outside the Queen's private quarters, he carried himself with a new sense of purpose and pride. He had been tested in the crucible of conflict and had emerged with his integrity intact. The spear in his hands felt lighter somehow, and the weight of his uniform felt like the embrace of honor itself. The palace staff who passed his position throughout the day offered subtle nods of respect and appreciation. Word had spread that Marcus Wellington was the guard who had stood firm when it mattered most, who had chosen duty over convenience, and who had proven that some lines truly cannot be crossed. The Queen Consort never again attempted to bypass security protocols, and while their relationship remained formal and somewhat distant, there was an undercurrent of mutual respect that had not existed before their confrontation. She had learned that authority has limits, and he had proven that those limits would be respectfully but firmly enforced. In the years that followed, Marcus's stand became legendary within palace circles. New guards were told his story as an example of the highest standards of service and integrity. His name became synonymous with unwavering dedication to duty and the courage to do what is right regardless of personal cost. Marcus Wellington had drawn a line in marble in history, and in doing so he had defined not only his own character, but the very meaning of service to the crown. The moment when he slammed his spear and froze the Queen Consort with his determination had become a defining moment for the entire institution, proving that some principles are worth defending no matter who challenges them. Royal Guard slams spear. Camilla frozen as he draws the line, even the Queen can't cross.